The sonar pulse echoed through the cramped control room, a rhythmic reminder that USS Stingray was alone in the Caribbean darkness. Captain William Carter stood behind his navigation officer, watching the depth gauge climb as they descended into the Cayman Trench. October 24th, 1963. The world above held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and down here, 300 feet below the surface, Carter's submarine carried secrets that could change everything. "Steady at 320 feet, Captain," Lieutenant Morrison reported, his voice tight with the kind of tension that came from knowing Soviet submarines prowled these same waters. Carter nodded, his weathered hands gripping the railing. 20 years of submarine duty had carved lines into his face that made him look older than 42. "Sonar, confirm that contact bearing 270. Petty Officer Chen pressed his headphones tighter. "Contact confirmed, sir. Stationary object, approximately 800 yards. Size suggests another submarine." The control room went silent. Carter felt his crew's eyes on him, waiting. "Take us to periscope depth, silent running protocol." As the submarine began its ascent, Carter retreated to his quarters. He needed to review intelligence reports, cross-reference coordinates. His cabin was barely larger than a closet, dominated by a narrow bunk and a small desk bolted to the floor. He was reaching for the latest dispatch when his hand brushed against something that shouldn't have been there. A leather-bound book, worn and water-stained, lying on his pillow. Carter froze. He knew every item in his quarters. This book didn't belong here. With careful fingers, Carter picked up the volume. The leather was cold, unnaturally so, covered with a thin film of salt residue. When he opened it, the pages crackled with age, the ink faded but still legible. The first entry was dated September 15th, 1943, exactly 20 years ago. But that wasn't what made Carter's blood run cold. It was the handwriting. He recognized it immediately because he saw it every day when he signed orders. The journal was written in his own hand. His eyes scanned the first entry. USS Stingray departed Norfolk at 0600 hours. Crew complement, 72. Executive Officer, Lieutenant Commander James Hargrove. Navigation Officer, Lieutenant Robert Morrison. Carter's current navigation officer, but Morrison would have been a child in 1943. This made no sense. Carter flipped through more pages, his pulse quickening. The journal chronicled submarine operations, combat encounters, crew interactions, all impossible. Then he reached the entry dated October 24th, 1963, today's date. 0830 hours. Descending into Cayman Trench. Sonar contact bearing 270. Unknown vessel, stationary. Something about this contact feels wrong, like destiny pulling us toward it. 0915 hours. We'll find this journal on my bunk. We'll read these words with disbelief and growing horror. William, if you're reading this, now, listen carefully. Do not approach the contact. Do not send the diving team. In approximately 3 hours, you will receive orders to investigate. You will think it's your duty. You will be wrong. 1200 hours. Lunch in the mess. Webb will complain about the coffee. Chen will joke about his mother's cooking. Hargrove will ask about shore leave in Miami. You will laugh, pretending everything is normal while this journal burns in your pocket. The truth is worse than madness, William. We are caught in something that shouldn't exist, a loop in time. The submarine you detected is USS Stingray, our ship, from another iteration of this day. The journal remembers for me now. 1445 hours. You will make the decision that dooms us. You will order the diving investigation. Chief Douglas will volunteer. 14 minutes later, Douglas will return to the airlock, but he won't be Douglas anymore. Something in that other submarine will come back with him. At 1847 hours, the lights will fail. In that darkness, you will hear footsteps in the corridor. Slow, deliberate, wet. Douglas's boots, that slight drag of his left foot. But when you open the door, the corridor will be empty except for wet footprints leading toward the torpedo room. By 1900 hours, 3 more crew members will be infected. You won't know which ones. They'll seem normal, but their eyes will be different when they think you're not watching. Flat, reflective, like light on deep water. At 2347 hours tonight, The water comes. The hull breach in Section 4. You'll try to seal it, but the locks won't respond. The water will be impossibly cold and taste of rust and time. As it rises past your chest, you'll hear your own voice on the intercom giving orders you never gave. William, I don't know if you can break this, but you have 17 seconds before Morrison knocks on your door. He'll report the hydrophone array as malfunctioning, picking up sounds that match our own engine signature. You'll think it's equipment failure. It isn't. It's the echo of us, rippling backward from the moment we die. 16 seconds now. The book feels heavier, doesn't it? 15 seconds. Look at your hands. Are they shaking? Mine are. 14 seconds. A knock at the door made Carter drop the journal. His heart hammered. He stared at the door, counted silently. 3, 4, 5. Captain? Morrison's voice came through the metal. Sorry to disturb you, sir, but we've got a problem with the forward hydrophone array. It's picking up engine sounds that match our own signature exactly. Carter's mouth had gone dry. He looked down at the journal. The handwriting was his own, but the ink at the bottom looked wet, as if just written. When he touched it, his fingertip came away stained blue. Captain, sir. One moment, Lieutenant. Carter closed the journal and slipped it into his jacket. When he opened the door, Morrison stood in the corridor, his young face creased with concern. Show me the readings. In the control room, Chen had the hydrophone feeds on speaker. The sound filled the space, the distinctive throb of the Stingray's engines, but with a strange quality, like an echo arriving before the original sound. Started about 3 minutes ago, Chen explained. At first I thought reflection from the thermocline, but the signature is too clean. Hargrove, the executive officer, stood beside Carter. Could be Soviet electronic warfare, Captain. Acoustic spoofing. Carter pulled his pocket watch, a gift from his father. 9:23 a.m. The journal predicted Morrison's report at 9:20, close enough to make his skin crawl. Lieutenant Webb, full diagnostic on all sonar equipment. Chen, switched to passive sonar only. The morning crept by with agonizing slowness. Tests showed nothing wrong. The mysterious contact remained stationary, and the acoustic echo continued, that impossible sound of the Stingray listening to itself. At 11:55 hours, Carter found himself in the mess hall. He hadn't consciously decided to go there, but his feet had carried him forward, following the script the journal had written. He sat at the officers' table with Webb, Morrison, Hargrove, and Chen. The steward brought their meals. Carter watched Webb take a sip of coffee, saw the engineer's face contort. Jesus, this coffee gets worse every patrol, Webb muttered. Tastes like they filtered it through the bilge pump. Morrison laughed. Chen was telling me about his mother's cooking. Even her worst meal beats anything we get here. Chen grinned. My mother could make tree bark taste good. Hargrove set down his fork. Captain, when we make port in Miami, any chance the crew might get extended shore leave? I'll see what I can do, Carter interrupted, his voice hollow. He stood abruptly. Excuse me. He made it to his quarters before the shaking started. Carter sat on his bunk, pulled out the journal with trembling hands. Every prediction had come true, down to the exact words. He flipped past October 24th, found more pages. 1300 hours, received encrypted communication from Subland, orders to investigate the contact, Operation Sapphire. Admiral Rickover's authorization code. You cannot refuse these orders. 1420 hours, approached within 50 yards. Visual confirmation, USS Stingray. Hull number 186. Identical to ours. Impossible, because there is only one Stingray. You're looking at yourself, at us. At the ship we become when the day ends badly. 1445 hours. Made the decision. Volunteered Douglas for diving investigation. His palm was warm, alive when you shook his hand. Remember that warmth. It's the last human thing you'll feel from him. 1459 hours. Douglas returned. Reported the other submarine's airlock was open. Found the interior intact but abandoned. No. Crew. No bodies. Only water. Ankle deep. Impossibly cold. Douglas brought back a sample. He also brought back something else, something that rode inside him. You won't notice the change immediately, but later, When you review security footage, you'll see it. That moment when Douglas paused in the airlock, his head tilted, listening to something only he could hear. 3 seconds where his face goes completely blank. Then his expression returns. But something happened. In those 3 seconds, Douglas drowned. Not physically. His lungs still draw air. His heart beats. But the thing that made him Douglas went under. Something else surfaced. 1847 hours. The lights will fail. A sharp knock interrupted Carter's reading. A young ensign stepped through the door, saluted. "Captain, encrypted communication from Subland. Eyes only, sir." Carter took the sealed envelope. "Dismissed." Alone again. Carter broke the seal. The message was brief. "To CDR. Carter, USS Stingray. From VADEM HG Rickover. Subland. Operation Sapphire. Proceed immediately to investigate sonar contact bearing 270. Authorization code Sapphire Delta 97. Carter read it 3 times, then watched the paper smoke and char, treated with chemicals that consumed the message. Within seconds, only ash remained. Operation Sapphire. Rickover's authorization. These were legitimate orders from the highest level of submarine command, and the journal had predicted them exactly. Carter examined his own motivations. Yes, he felt duty-bound. But beneath that, something else stirred. Terrible curiosity. Whatever waited in that other submarine was connected to this impossible journal. He had a choice. He could refuse the orders, cite safety concerns, risk court-martial. But Carter knew himself. The journal knew him better. He would follow orders because that's who he was. A submarine captain who obeyed commands even when every instinct screamed danger. At 13:15 hours, Carter assembled his senior staff. "Gentlemen, we've received orders from Subland to investigate the sonar contact. Operation Sapphire, Admiral Rickover's direct authorization." Hargrove frowned. "Captain, approaching an unknown contact during current tensions." "It's not Soviet," Morrison interrupted. "That contact is broadcasting our signature. Not similar, identical, including mechanical irregularities unique to Stingray." "Then what the hell is it?" Hargrove demanded. "That's what we're going to find out." At 14:20 hours, USS Stingray crept within 50 yards of the contact. Carter peered through the periscope. What he saw made his breath catch. A submarine, identical to Stingray in every detail. Same hull configuration, same conning tower, same hull number, 186. "Jesus Christ," Hargrove whispered. "That's us." Carter stepped back, mind racing. Hallucination, but multiple people saw it. Soviet fake, but the detail was too perfect, or the journal was right. "Prepare the wet room. I need a volunteer for diving investigation." Chief Douglas stepped forward immediately. "I'll go, Captain." "Full safety protocols. At the first sign of anything unusual, return immediately." Carter watched Douglas suit up, movements practiced and efficient. Everything normal. "Ready when you are, Captain." "Proceed. And Chief, be careful." Through hull-mounted cameras, Carter tracked Douglas's progress. The underwater lights revealed that impossible ghost ship. Douglas approached the duplicate Stingray's airlock. "Captain, the outer hatch is open," Douglas reported, almost like they're expecting visitors. "Proceed with caution." Douglas disappeared inside. For long minutes, only his breathing filled the comms. Then, "Captain, you're not going to believe this. The submarine is intact, but there's no crew, no bodies, no signs of evacuation, just empty. And there's water inside, ankle deep. Temperature readings are strange, far colder than surrounding seawater, and the salinity is off." Carter exchanged glances with Hargrove. "Can you determine what happened to the crew?" "Negative, sir. It's like they vanished. Take a water sample and return immediately." Douglas's return took 8 minutes. Carter counted every second. The airlock cycled. Douglas emerged, removing his helmet. His face was flushed, eyes bright. He held up a sealed container with the water sample. "Got it, Captain. That water is wrong. Good work. Get cleaned up and file your report." Carter watched Douglas walk away, listened for that distinctive gait with the slight drag. It was there. exactly as always. Nothing seemed different, but Carter remembered the journal's warning. He returned to his quarters, called security. "Send me the footage from Waterlock B, time frame 1445 to 1500 hours. Within minutes, he watched the tape. Douglas climbing out of the airlock, water streaming off his suit. And there it was. For 3 seconds, Douglas stood completely still, head tilted slightly left, face utterly blank. Not thinking, not reacting, just empty. Then his normal expression returned. Carter rewound, watched again. That moment of blankness was unmistakable. Something had happened to Douglas in that other submarine. The hours crawled forward. At 17:30, Douglas walked past. "Evening, Captain." Voice normal. Demeanor unchanged. But Carter tested this. He turned away, then glanced back quickly. For just an instant, he caught Douglas's reflection. The chief's eyes were wrong, flat and reflective, catching lights in a way human eyes shouldn't. Then Douglas shifted, and his eyes were normal again. At 1847 hours exactly, the lights failed. The submarine plunged into darkness. Then emergency lighting kicked in, painting everything crimson. Carter heard shouted questions, the crew's confusion. He emerged into the red-lit corridor. Men were checking equipment, calling status reports. Webb's voice crackled over the intercom. "Main power fault, Captain. No obvious cause. It's like something deliberately—" The lights flickered, died, returned. That's when Carter heard them. Footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate, with that distinctive drag. Carter turned, but the passage was empty except for wet footprints on the deck. Fresh water, glistening in emergency lights, leading toward the torpedo room. Carter followed the footprints. The water was cold where it pooled. He touched one footprint with his finger. No smell, pure water. The torpedo room door was sealed. Carter hesitated before opening it. The room appeared empty. Then Carter saw them, 3 crew members standing in shadows at the far end, backs to him, staring at the aft bulkhead. "Petty Officer Davis? Rodriguez? Chief Webb?" The 3 men didn't respond. They stood perfectly still, water dripping from their uniforms. Carter approached. "Are you all right?" Finally, Webb turned. His face was slack, eyes reflecting emergency lights with that flat quality. When Webb spoke, his voice was hollow. "Captain, we've been waiting." "Waiting for what?" The other 2 turned, Davis and Rodriguez, young men Carter had known for months. Same empty expression, same dead reflection in their eyes. "For the ship to remember," Rodriguez said. "For the loop to close," Davis added. "For the water to rise," Webb finished. They spoke in sequence, voices identical despite different vocal characteristics, and they were dripping, soaked through, water streaming as if they'd just climbed from the sea. Carter backed toward the door. "You're not my crew anymore." "We're more than we were," Webb said. "Less than we could be. We're the memory of drowning, Captain. We're what happens when October 24th, 1963 eats its own tail. We're every version of Stingray that sank in these waters. Every iteration where you made the wrong choice." "I haven't made any choice yet." Davis tilted his head. "You made it when you read the journal. You make it in every iteration, because you can't help yourself. Duty and curiosity, binding tighter than chains." Rodriguez stepped closer. "The other submarine isn't Russian. It's us. From the moment we sink. Time bent back on itself. We've been trying to warn you, but the warnings become part of the pattern. The journal exists because you write it after you learn what happens. You write it to warn yourself, but the warning ensures you'll make the same choices. Then how do I break it?" "You don't," Webb said simply. "No version of Captain William Carter breaks the loop. The cautious Carter who turns away gets court-martialed, isn't here when the loop needs him. The brave Carter who investigates personally drowns in the other submarine. The paranoid Carter who destroys the journal makes different mistakes but arrives at the same ending. Every path leads to water," Davis continued. "Every choice leads to 2347 hours tonight, Section 4, hull breach. The cold water rising. And then time folding backward, the loop resetting, October 24th, beginning again." Carter felt the weight pressing down, the inevitability. "If I can't break the loop, what am I supposed to do?" The three infected crew members looked at each other, and for a moment Carter saw something beyond the flatness. Pity, perhaps. "Write the journal," they said in unison. "When the water comes tonight, in your final moments, you'll write the entries. You'll warn yourself, because that's who you are, Captain." Carter backed out, sealed the door. His mind reeled. If everything they said was true, his fate was sealed. In 8 hours, the hull would breach, the Stingray would sink, and in his final moments, Carter would write the journal, creating the very artifact that had warned him, but he had to try. Carter gathered his remaining officers, Hargrove, Morrison, Chen. Their eyes held fear but trust. "We're evacuating Section 4 and sealing all bulkheads. Any crew member acting strangely is to be reported, and we're surfacing, right now." Morrison asked quietly, "What loop, Captain?" Carter pulled out the journal, laid it on the chart table. "This appeared this morning. It's written in my hand, but I didn't write it. It predicts everything with perfect accuracy, and it says we sink tonight at 23:47 hours. Hargrove's face went pale. "Captain, we need to surface, now!" Chen rushed to ballast controls. Morrison calculated ascent. For a few hopeful minutes, Carter thought they might escape. The Stingray began to rise. Then, at 150 feet, the engines died. Webb's voice over the intercom, flat and hollow. "Captain, total engine failure. No mechanical cause. The engines simply stopped." Carter grabbed the handset. "Chief, what's your status?" A long pause. "Changed is better than infected, Captain. I understand why this has to happen. The loop needs to close. I'm sorry, but I had to shut down the engines. We can't surface. We can only sink." Carter slammed his fist against the bulkhead. "Emergency backup systems. Morrison, restart the engines manually." For hours, they fought. Morrison tried to restart engines. Carter searched for more infected. They found 2 more. Both had contacted the water sample. Their eyes reflected light with that flatness, and they smiled with mouths that remembered how but forgotten why. The Stingray drifted, sinking slowly. Carter watched the depth gauge climb. 200 feet, 250, 300. At 2200 hours, Carter returned to his quarters. The journal lay open, and new entries had appeared. Entries in his handwriting, still wet with fresh ink. He was writing the journal right now, in the future. The words were appearing in reverse causality. The entries detailed the next hour and 47 minutes. The final loss of hope. The crew gathering, some praying, some silent. Chen playing harmonica. Hargrove sitting beside Carter, sharing their last conversation. And at 23:47 hours, the hull breach. The cold water rushing in. The submarine settling into darkness. The moment of drowning stretched into eternity. But also, in those final minutes, Carter would write the journal, would inscribe the warnings. The journal appeared because he wrote it. He wrote it because it appeared. The perfect closed loop. Carter read his future words, felt tears streaming. Then he heard it, Chen's harmonica. It had started. He made his way to the control room. His crew was there, faces showing knowledge of death but also strange acceptance. "I want you to know," Carter began, voice rough, "that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. What's happening doesn't make sense. But this isn't your fault. Will anyone know what happened?" a young ensign asked. Carter thought about the loops. "I think we've already been found, by ourselves." Time folded back. They waited as the depth gauge climbed. 350 feet, 400. The hull groaned. Small leaks appeared. At 23:20 hours, Carter excused himself. The journal waited, and he had one duty left, to write the warnings that would complete the loop. He picked up his pen and began. September 15th, 1943, USS Stingray departed Norfolk at 600 hours. The words flowed as if copying from memory. He was fulfilling his role, inscribing text he'd already read this morning. Past and future collapsed. He wrote the crew roster, the predictions, the warnings. He tried to insert information to break the loop, but his hand wrote what it had to write. When he reached October 24th, his hand trembled. He wrote about finding the journal, about predicted moments, about the choice he couldn't help but make. At 23:46 hours, The hull groaned, water rushing in aft sections. He had 1 minute. He used it for one final entry. 2, 3, 4 to 6 hours. If you're reading this, you've survived longer than I did. Maybe each loop we learn a little more, push against the pattern until it breaks. Or maybe I'm lying to myself. But William, whoever you are, whichever iteration, don't give up. Even if the loop can't be broken, even if we're doomed to drown forever, don't give up, because the alternative is to stop being who we are. I'd rather drown as William Carter than survive as something else. The water is almost here. I can hear it rushing, feel the deck tilting. Chen's harmonica has stopped. Someone is praying. Hargrove just saluted me. I'm going to seal this journal so it survives, so it can travel backward through time to warn my previous self. So the loop continues. I don't understand how it works, how the journal moves backward, how the infected crew exists, how October 24th folds back endlessly. But I understand this. I'm afraid. Afraid of the water, of darkness, of crushing pressure. Afraid I failed my crew, failed to break the pattern, but I'm also grateful. For this day, for these men, for the honor of command, for Chen's music and Hargrove's friendship and Morrison's jokes, for all of it, even knowing how it ends. The water is here now, coming under the door. Cold, so cold. This is my last entry. To whoever reads this, past me, future me, another me, remember us. Remember we tried. Remember we died doing our duty, even when that duty was impossible. Remember we were human once, before the water took us. Remember, the page ended, the sentence unfinished. Carter looked at his watch. 2347 hours. The lights flickered. Someone screamed. The water came. It rushed from everywhere, through cracks that shouldn't exist, from vents and seams and solid bulkheads. The water was impossibly cold, pure as distilled emptiness. Carter sealed the journal in a waterproof case and held it tight as water rose past his knees, his waist, his chest. The cold was absolute, freezing not flesh but soul. He thought of his crew, hoped they'd died quickly, prayed the loop would somehow break. The water reached his face. He held his breath, felt pressure building in his lungs. Around him, the submarine groaned its final prayer. He was going to die here, drowned in water that shouldn't exist by a pattern that couldn't be broken. His lungs burned, his vision darkened. His final thought, in the morning, I'll wake up and find the journal and I'll read these words I just wrote, and it will begin again. And somewhere, somewhen, Captain William Carter opened his eyes in his quarters aboard USS Stingray, reached for his desk, and found a leather-bound journal on his pillow, worn and water-stained. The date was October the 24th, 1963. The loop closed, the pattern held, and the water remembered.